consistently, LeafFilter has had something sitting on top of it. I don't think there's been a day since the stuff started to fall off in the spring. Hey, it's Jonathan. It's Monday, November 9th, 2020. I'm back up at the gutter level, as you can see. Wanted to show you what's been going on. It's been about a week. The leaves are continuing to fall off the trees. I would say some of these trees we've lost 50 or 60%. Some trees aren't quite as far along, but stay tuned and I'll show you what's happening. I am on the north side of the garage this morning and we are looking at the MasterShield system. As you can see, it's pretty free and open and clear. We do have a little bit of debris that's congregating here on the left side at the transition between MasterShield and the LeafFilter system. You can see some small leaves and some pine needles that have gotten into the opening here, kind of the weep holes right there at the front leading edge of the system. Those leaves should blow out, as will the pine needles. But as you can see, the screen is mostly clear at this point. So nothing really new to report on the MasterShield system. It's continuing to do what it should. You can see a few of those leaves just cruising off the top of the gutter guard as I am speaking. Here we're looking at leaf solution on the north side of the garage. You can see it's got a combination of debris sitting on top of the surface in addition to some open areas to take in the water. So this system has, I think some of the leaves have kind of blown off since the last time I was up here. There is a piece of moss right here that you can kind of see, that dark blob right there. That moss before was pretty green and bright, and I think it had rolled off the roof. And I was curious if it was going to take root. It looks like it's just dried up, and it should float off the top at some point when we have a rain or a good breeze to take it off. Here we're looking at LeafLock on the north side of the garage. You can see quite a bit of pine needle activity and a lot of those locust leaves and stems that are sitting either on the gutter guard surface, or really a lot of that's sitting up on the roof. So it sits a little bit back behind. If you see, here's the roof line right here. So if I kind of draw my finger across, you'll see a lot of that debris, some of which is sitting on top of the gutter guard, some of which is sitting behind it. But as we've seen in earlier videos, it's not unusual once the debris makes its way down. If it's sitting at or on top of the gutter guard, it may just hang out there for a while before it eventually blows away. So what we're seeing is just an accumulation of stuff on top of and behind the gutter guard surface. Now, one of the things I've commented before about the LeafLock system is that the screen opening is a little bit more porous than some of the other systems. And so one of the risks with pine needles, these long needle pines, is that they can get inside the gutter. They can wedge up vertically inside that screen. And I'm sure there's some of that going on. There's so much of this stuff sitting on top of it right now. But most of what I see is sitting horizontally on the screen. So hopefully that's a good sign that when the wind or the water drives the stuff off the top, that we'll see very little remnants of the debris sitting on top of the gutter guard system. Here we're looking at LeafFilter on the north side of the garage. You can see it is buried under mounds of pine needles and leaves at this point. This system has, because it sits flatter in the gutter, is more likely for the leaves and debris as they roll off the roof to just land on top of the gutter guard. And you'd want this stuff to be able to blow off, but here on the north side of the garage, it's not really doing that. So from the difference between last week and this week is that we just have more stuff sitting on top of it. Here we're looking at the GutterGlove Easy On do-it-yourself MicroMesh gutter guard system. It is on the north side of the garage. And you can see it's doing a pretty good job, pretty effective job at the moment. We have some stems from the locust tree with the flowers, or excuse me, with the leaves that come off on the stems. Sometimes they come down with stem. Sometimes the stem breaks off and the leaves flutter off separately, so we have a combination of that plus some pine needles activity that's hanging out. More of it to the right side of the screen. And then as you come over to the left, it frees up a little bit more. Again, more here to the far left of the screen. So my synopsis on this system is that it continues to do a pretty effective job of pushing the debris forward and kind of gets it down to this lower level here. And then that stuff should wash or blow off when we have a pretty good rain or wind that comes through. Here we're looking at the clean mesh system from Semco, a MicroMesh. This looks a lot like it did last week. Most of the screen is free and clear to take in the water, and the little bit of accumulation of debris on this. This is certainly not out of the norm this time of the year with the amount of stuff that we have falling off the trees. And relatively speaking, this one is doing a very good job with the leaves and debris. On the north side of the garage here, this one is number 2 currently behind the MasterShield. So interesting that this has some similar design characteristics to MasterShield in some regards, at least from a leaf and debris standpoint. Does a pretty effective job taking off allowing that stuff to come off. So we've got a pretty good angle here, pretty good pitch, and that's one of the drivers to get that stuff off the top of the gutter screen. I am now on the south side of the garage. We are looking at the LeafFilter system, and you can see here that this still has a pretty good accumulation of leaves and pine needles and other small debris on top of the gutter guard surface. So what's happening is as the leaves and debris are kind of hitting the roof and working their way down, because the system sits flatter inside the gutter, it allows some of that stuff to accumulate on top. Now, it's not quite as bad as it was last week. There was a whole lot more stuff sitting on it. You can see some of the screen at this point, but there is some new activity over here to the right. So it's kind of an accumulation of what was there plus the new stuff more off to the right. And then as we look over here on the left, some of that stuff has blown off the top of the surface. So consistently, LeafFilter has had something sitting on top of it. I don't think there's been a day since the stuff started to fall off in the spring, especially with the advent of the locust flowers, that LeafFilter has not had something sitting on top of it. And when I say something, I mean something meaningful on top of it. So this is pretty consistent on the south and the north side. Actually, the north side is worse than the south side here. Here we're looking at the LeaFree system on the south side of the garage. The cover itself, the top of it, is free because this isn't a micro mesh screen. You don't have really the same impact with stuff sitting on top of it, because the way this works is the water transitions off the roof, hits this, and then curls around the opening and goes inside the front there. So this has been pretty consistent recently in that there's not a lot of leaves and debris sitting on top of the gutter guard. Today is no different. If we step down, this is where it becomes a little more problematic. So you can see the debris and the pine needles and the leaves that have kind of worked their way into the opening, into that little crevice. You can see here across the opening how the pine needles and the leaves and some of that smaller debris have worked their way into that opening, and they're just kind of lodged there, hanging out, nowhere really to go. In this case, they've either dried up and can't get inside because they're kind of stuck to the opening, or in the case of this leaf, maybe a little bit too big to get through that opening at this point. So until something hits that or knocks it out, dislodges it, it's going to stay where it is. So you can see some of the pine needles, some of that smaller debris here to the left. And the same is pretty much true as you go across. Now the other thing that this system has in it is these little ribs. If you can see inside, you'll see those little ribs about every 3 inches or so. And those ribs are about 1 inch wide, I would say. So what you'll see is some of that debris actually gets stuck on top of those ribs and it just lodges on there. So, but between that, it looks mostly open so that the water can actually go inside the gutter. This is the one that I'm going to be most curious what it looks like inside when we're done with this experiment, because it does have that opening. It does allow stuff to go into it. We know that it actually draws stuff inside of it. So the question is, how much of that stuff is actually going to be inside the gutter guard once we're finished with this experiment. Here we're looking at LeafLock on the south side of the garage. You can see just a smattering of leaves, stems, and maybe a few pine needles on top of the system. As we get over to the far right, kind of the transition point, you can see a little bit more stuff sitting there. But by and large, the screen is available and open. Actually, we've got the way the sun is shining today, we got a kind of a pretty good vantage point inside the gutter as well. So you can see it's just a little bit of stuff sitting on top of this system. But it's doing a pretty effective job. Now comparing this to the north side has a whole lot more stuff sitting not only on the screen itself, but kind of up at the roof level. And that's consistent with what we've seen when you have a whole lot of debris coming off the roof. It can just accumulate kind of at this transition point where it essentially flattens out a little bit before it hits the screen. And you get all that stuff that wedges up top of there. Here on the south side of the garage, that hasn't been as big of an issue recently as it is on the north side. Here we're looking at MasterShield on the south side of the garage. You can see that the screen is pretty well clear, available to take in the water. You've got some of the locust leaves that have accumulated in the weep hole opening here at the front. Experience shows that that stuff will eventually work its way out and go to the ground, but at the moment you can see how that weep hole does collect some debris. Sorry for my camera shadow here. It's a bright sunny day this morning, but I did want to highlight, that there is a little bit of debris sitting on top as it comes down. By and large, this has been pretty free and clear throughout the test, and today would be a pretty good indicator that nothing dramatically has changed between now and the last time I was up here. Here we're looking at Gutterglove Pro. This system is pretty free and clear. You can see a few random leaves and stems from the locust tree, but by and large, this thing is free and clear. One of the things I've seen on the south side of the garage is that when the wind hits, well, there you go. Here's some stuff that is released from the roof, and now we got a little bit more stuff up there. But you can essentially see what happens on a dry day like today. A little breeze brings the stuff on top, a little breeze kicks the stuff off the top and to the ground level. And what I was going to say is here on the south side, it seems to do a better job of that. So the north side is a little bit more protected and more stuff sits on top of the gutter guards. But at the moment, the Gutterglove Pro is free and clear and available for rain the next time that happens. This is the diamond mesh screen from Valor. As you can see, there's some screen opening available, decent amount of screen opening available, and a decent amount that we have leaves sitting on top of it. I would say just based on the current status of these leaves, shouldn't really have any impact on the water getting inside the gutter because they're just propped up on top. And there's nothing really matting them down, as we had seen in prior videos with the locust flowers that were truly matted down on top of the gutter guard surface. These leaves and the pine needles are just kind of hanging out. They're transitioning off the roof onto the gutter guard surface, and then hopefully will eventually blow off. There are some indications of the pine needles that have plugged vertically inside the screen. And what that can do, as you can see here, for instance, there's a pine needle right here, a couple pine needles right here, and they're plugged inside the opening of the holes there. And what that's now doing is it's preventing this stem, that locust leaf stem, from progressing forward. So the locust stem is stuck behind that. So it's just going to be a matter of time before this stuff dries up sufficiently and it either washes through inside the gutter or it blows off the top. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe buttons and ding the bell, and you'll be notified the next time we upload a video. There's quite a bit remaining, however. A lot of that is wedged up underneath, kind of on the back side of the gutter guard, so the roof overhangs a little bit and the gutter guard actually sits underneath